It's going to be noisy, I do believe. My name is Dashin Grizzly. I am in Cedar Rapids, Iowa right now. Fucking Iowa. Always Iowa. But it's not the end of my day. It's the middle of my day. I'm waiting to be unloaded, so you may hear some noises of forklifts and shit, so I apologize. But neuroticism. I painted myself into a corner by saying I would talk about this next, because it should be done last. There's no doubt in my mind that when you talk about neuroticism, you kind of have to get the others out of the way, because lots of other traits have the main thing people associate with neuroticism: loading on negative emotion. But some negative emotions don't load on neuroticism. Like, for example, we were talking about people who are conscientious, being hyper orderly, the kind of person who would have, your typical media shoved down your throat OCD behavior, compulsive hand washing, or something of the sort. Somebody who's overly neat, the kind of person who is so orderly that they have such a clear idea of where a boundary is that they can't distinguish it from the rest of everything else, such as somebody with anorexia. Somebody who's anorexic can't look at their entire body. They see one part of their body that they don't like and superimpose it on the rest of it. They are just incapable of doing that. And it's a really interesting thing, because something like anorexia is a first world problem. It doesn't really happen when people are in states where being conscientious isn't something you have to do, because it's all about what you can get now, and you take what you can get now. So that being said, there are plenty of things within the other traits that have negative emotion attached to them that don't load on neuroticism as a trait. People who are neurotic have anticipatory anxiety. They do not like things that are new. They don't like novelty. It's really difficult to parse out so many things, because I'm completely unqualified to talk about the neuroscience behind it. But you almost have to. But I'm going to avoid stepping on my own dick for this one. There's just no need for me to go down a road where I'll stumble across words. So when you look at the evolutionary behavior of people, you can realize that over the course of time, we have been the type of species that constantly explores. And going through unknown unknowns is the most terrifying thing that we can do. And neuroticism, in a lot of ways, is about the anticipation of something instead of the thing itself. In a lot of ways, you could say the exact same thing about somebody who's extroverted. Because somebody who's extroverted, you would think, oh, what they want to do is go to a party. They may find that they're actually far more excited about wanting to go to a party. And by the time they get there, their excitement levels are not as high as they were when they were just anticipating the party. And the same thing is, like, for me, when I'm driving, when I was driving when I was younger, from North Carolina to Pennsylvania. I would be excited to go to Pennsylvania. But when I got there, I realized I just enjoyed the drive up there, because I was anticipating something. And that is the crux of neuroticism. The anticipation of something you may want or you may not want. Because deep down, neuroticism is the motivational system. Either going towards something you want, it's kind of an extroversion model, because extroversion and neuroticism are sort of twins, different sides of the same coin. And neuroticism is a lot about avoiding what you don't want to happen. And passively avoiding an unknown unknown, or a known unknown. So what do I mean by that? Well, we can tackle withdrawal first. I like withdrawal better. Let's check that out. What a shocker. I score low. Not as low as I did on the others, though. So when it comes to withdrawal, somebody who is high in trait withdrawal, substrate of neuroticism, they're the type to be lonely. They're the type to be sad. They are the type to feel isolated. Most specifically, the kind of fear that they face, because fear is a motivating force behind someone who's neurotic. And there's a difference in between the fear circuit and the panic circuit. So when somebody is scared of something, I'm distracted by noises. When somebody's scared by something and they're high in withdrawal, instead of doing the fight, flight, or freeze, they are passively avoiding things. They will say, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't think it'd be my environment. I don't want to go out. I'm a homebody. Things like that. The kind of person who is high in withdrawal trait, they are going to be the kind of person where if you mess with their schema, if you poke a hole in their reality, they'll go down a very, very negative road. Say you have something like a date. Say the date says, we'll meet here, and at this time. So you go to the bar, or wherever, because that's where I meet people, and they're not there. They said they would be. You call them, they don't answer their phone. Well, somebody high in withdrawal will feel, who knows what they'll feel. The depths of the darkness they will travel to in that moment will go so much farther than the individual instance of being stood up or whatever the case may be. It will be, I'm a bad person, nobody likes me, no wonder this happens, I really should have known, I'm not worthy to hang out with anybody, nobody loves me. I mean, it goes dark, deep, and quickly. Whereas somebody who's low in characteristic withdrawal will shrug it off and do what they would have done beforehand, without that being the setup for the night. It's from one plan to another with not a lot of thought about it. You don't have to go home and cry just because somebody stood you up or just because things didn't turn out. Your schema has had a hole poked right into it, and you can fill it with so many other things, so they don't focus on it. They don't hyper orient themselves towards the potentiality of negative consequences that were causal in them being stood up. In a lot of ways, they are that all they care about is solving the mystery of why that bad thing happened. So somebody who is high in withdrawal is they're rough on themselves in a lot of ways. But, you find that with anybody who's high in neuroticism. Being as I'm in the 31st percentile, I think, of this, pretty sure that was it, I, of course, feel like I'm far closer associated to the type of person who just shrugs things off. I do not feel a lot of anticipatory anxiety. I do not get lonely. I do not beat myself up. I don't judge myself to the degree that makes me go down terrible rabbit holes. And it's seeing people do that is enough to just point me firmly in the direction of, let's be reasonable with ourselves and let's not jump to ungodly, terrible conclusions just because my imagination has the capacity to do so. After that is volatility. Where do I stand? I'll let you guess. Is it low? Is it low, Alex? I'll take low for 200, 400, 800, nay, 1600. Volatility seems like a very aptly named trait. I like it. Volatile, unstable. I fuck with it. People who are volatile vary a lot in their mood, a lot in their personality, a lot in their wants and needs. It's almost like you don't have to have bipolar in order to be bipolar, because people who are high in volatility can shift dramatically. People who are high in volatility can be manic and depressive at the same time. It's extreme agitation. And somebody who goes down the road that their brain lets them travel when they're high in volatility is the kind that leads them to social interactions that are argumentative, that are conflict rich. So somebody who is low in volatility obviously doesn't vary much in mood. Somebody who's low in volatility doesn't have to have a reason to lash out at someone. They don't find much reason to anyways, even if somebody hurts them or tries to fuck with them. They don't feel the need to express how they're feeling in a way that makes others uncomfortable. They're a lot easier to be around if they're lower in volatility. So, considering these things, volatility is the one where when you get into a conflict with somebody, you have... It doesn't even have to be somebody. It can be a thing. It can be a new situation. That's all it takes. Because somebody high in volatility is the type of person, like the extremes of volatility, you see things like agoraphobia. You see the kind of person who can't face a new situation. The unknown is just too deep of a rabbit hole. So you'll go down that road of thinking about all the things that could go wrong. Anticipatory anxiety, of course, again, that seems to be a huge theme with neurotic people, but volatility, again, fight, flight, or freeze, whereas withdrawal was passive avoidance. So this trait in general has more action-oriented kind of focus around the loading of negative emotion within somebody's personality, whereas withdrawal is a passive avoidance characteristic. So, there are some things about neuroticism, specifically the thing that jumps most out at me is James Damore's Google memo. And the term neuroticism, the fact that he used it, is what got him a lot of criticism in the first place, because it was seen as derogatory for some reason, because women are more neurotic than men by a pretty substantial margin. We're talking about a 60-40 split. That's a hell of a difference. The people who are most neurotic will almost always be women. I'm getting unloaded, so sorry for the noise or the movement if I'm dancing over here. When you look across political spectrums, there isn't much difference except for withdrawal. Liberals tend to be higher in withdrawal than conservatives. So, that being said, there's not too much predictive power politically within the neurotic realm. When people say that there's something wrong with saying that women are more neurotic than men, I don't necessarily understand it. It doesn't seem all that political to me. And what's most interesting, of course, this is a Petersonism, but if you look at the countries that have had the most done to laws to propagate egalitarian values so that the differences between sex as far as the law is concerned is minimized as much as possible, the biological variables increase in distance between each other. So when we look at something like neuroticism, we can tell that environment plays a slight role in it, but when the environment is to make things as equal as possible, the biological factors maximize. So it's something worth contending with and thinking about why it happens. And one of the things that you may consider is that women are not suited for their body only. It seems, behaviorally speaking, evolutionarily speaking, that a woman's entire system is not devoted to determining what she feels or what she could be afraid of, but of what her and the infant dicot would be afraid of. That the fact that they are a pair, biologically speaking. If you lived in a different time period, and I mean 10,000 years ago, you would have a lot more children than you would now. Maybe you have one or two now. Not happening a long time ago. You'd either die in childbirth from having too many babies, or you'd keep having babies until you couldn't anymore, and then your offspring would have babies, and you as a grandmother would have babies. The fact that we look at women and we look at men and we try to determine why a female would be neurotic compared to a man on average in both groups, it's missing the point, because the thing that a female does when it comes to raising a child, especially in that first year and a half, 2 years, where it basically needs to constantly be carried around, is built so deeply in her neurological systems, in her physiology, that when we avoid thinking about the fact that women are made for the purpose of having children, even though we're at the point where you can choose not to, your biology doesn't care about your choice and your ability to move freely within a first world where it's not incumbent upon the species' success for you to reproduce as much as possible within the time frame that you're allotted. Your biological clock and the use of your biology for the purposes of propagating the species isn't needed or relevant in the situation that we find ourselves in with almost 8 billion people. But your body doesn't know, and your body doesn't care, and your body will react the way it has reacted for 250,000 years, more than that. So it's something really worth considering when we're trying to politicize something that is objectively true, biologically true, behaviorally true. And I don't understand why we would avoid that. Understand yourselves. Neuroticism. Hell of a thing to unpack, my friends. My name's Dashin Grizzly. I'm in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I will catch you tomorrow. And I'm not going to say what I'm going to do tomorrow, because I fucked up. I should have waited to do this last, because this could have been maybe twice as long if I did. But yeah, that's all. Catch you later, my friends. Dope. Yeah.